Adventures in Aeronautical Design and Research, an informal talk to the Women's Engineering Society on the 4th of March 1944 by Hilda Lyon. I hope that my title will not lead you to expect thrilling stories of flying experiments or of outstanding scientific discoveries. Lots of the work is very humdrum, just pushing a slide rule or reading wind tunnel balances. But there are exciting times when the prototype flies. It was the last war that gave me an entry into aeronautics as stress technician in an aircraft firm. The application of mathematics to engineering problems appealed to me, and it was like going to a foreign country where men talked a different language, the language of the practical engineer. If I could start at the beginning again, I should go to the local technical school with the works apprentices. For 5 years in 2 firms, I was the stress office and the aerodynamics department, responsible only to the chief designer for my work and with no assistant to check it. Structures were relatively easy then, of course, mostly braced biplanes with no stress skin to worry about. My first job was on a biplane bomber of about the same span as the Lancaster, but the war was over before even the prototype flew. The work interested me, but there seemed to be no prospect of more promotion and responsibility for a woman mathematician. My next job was on airships, stressing in the technical office at Cardington, when the R101 was being designed for carrying passengers to the Dominions and India. Airship structures are very different from braced biplanes. Much more interesting. Watching the ship growing in the hangar, and later on the excitement of the early flights, particularly of my one joyride as a passenger. The R100 was built at the same time in Yorkshire and came to Cardington, where I watched her return to the mast on my last day there before sailing for America for my next adventure. This too was concerned with airships. We were beginning to realise that wind tunnels on small models were misleading, and that a somewhat bluffer shape would give as low a drag on the full-scale airship, while providing more valuable space for lifting gas and reducing the weight of the structure. I decided to combine a trip to America with an attempt to solve it by doing wind tunnel tests on airship models at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. By this time I knew what I was looking for, and I deliberately faked the conditions in the tunnels to give results which could be connected with more confidence to full-scale conditions. I'd only been a month in the USA when I heard of the fatal accident to the R101 on an attempted flight to India. This was a hard blow, and it took all the heart out of my research, for a time. America gave me my first taste of experimental work and of controlling electric motors and using a lathe in the machine shops. After a preliminary course in wind tunnel testing, I was allowed to use the tunnel, sometimes with assistance, but often alone, particularly in the evenings when all the staff had gone home. Sheets of metal lying in a corner used to creak eerily in the return flow from the tunnel. The experience in that tunnel gave me more confidence and taught me more than assisting an expert staff in a more up-to-date tunnel could ever have done. I followed up my 2 years in America with a year at Göttingen in Germany. In aeronautical circles, Göttingen is famous for its research institute, and more so for Professor Prantl, the head of the institute, whose contribution to the science of aeronautics is a very large one. My own work was to mainly study and theoretical research with his advice and help. The political developments during my stay in Germany in 1932 to 33 are probably of more general interest, as Hitler was made Chancellor in January of 1933. A large proportion of the students were Nazis, and they were jubilant. The Fackelzug, or torchlight procession in honour of Hitler, was the largest Göttingen had ever seen. It was picturesque and impressive to an onlooker like myself, but there was something ominous about it, as these serious-looking lads marched past singing the Horst Wessel song. The summer session of the university began a fortnight late, all the Jewish professors having been sent on leave. This eliminated most of the mathematical and physics faculties, and soon the opponents of Hitler, non-Jewish ones, were learning to keep their mouths shut and to accept the Hitler regime. at least outwardly. My next 4 years were spent at home for family reasons, nursing my mother, doing housework, and carrying on with my work at the same time. Some of it was paid, but much of it was not. But the main thing to me was to keep in touch with aeronautical work. The university libraries of Hull, some 20 miles away, and Leeds, 40 miles away, were a great help, and visits to the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington and RAE at Farnborough helped to keep me in touch with other work, although I missed the discussions with colleagues. I was very glad to get back to full-time aeronautical work again in 1937, when I came to the aerodynamics department at RAE Farnborough. At first I was doing experimental work in the wind tunnels, but I feel more at home on my present, more theoretical work. I enjoyed the practical work, and I'm glad to have had the experience, but I have no wish to return to it now. The rest of my story will have to be told after the war, if there's anything worth telling at all.